Dobro večer svima. Good evening to everybody. Ovo će biti uglavnom dvojezično predavanje, uglavnom dvojezični susret. Možda se poslužimo nekakvim dodatnim jezicima, ovisno po potrebi. Moje ime je Miljenko Hidarović, voditelj sam Platforme Klio. Za one koji nas baš ne prate, Platforma Klio je organizacija koja u najvećem dijelu okuplja učitelje povijesti kako bi doznali nešto novo i ojačali svoje sposobnosti. Danas imamo posebnu priliku ugostiti dvije gošće, i to gošće iz Ukrajine, dvije profesorice, dvije doktorice znanosti. Umjesto da ja govorim o njima, ja ću njih pozvati da se one predstave. Kateryna govori kombinaciju većinom hrvatskog, ali nešto si pomaže i engleskim, a Maryna, ona će pričati na engleskom jeziku. So, dear professors, dear guests, mostly from Ukraine, you can introduce yourself. Since I know Kateryna from before, I will give the word first to Kateryna, and then Maryna, you can also introduce yourself.
Hvala Miljenko, dobar večer svima, zovem se Kateryna. Ja sam uglavnom živim u Zaporizhzhiju, ali sada nalazim u Zagrebu. Ovdje ponekad imam Erasmus stipendije na Filozofskom fakultetu, predavam povijest Ukrajine i politologiju u Zaporizhzhskom institutu ekonomike i informacijske tehnologije. Ja sam također voditeljica analitičkog centra za balkanske studije. Bavim se malo analitikom, znam malo za Balkane, bolje za Ukrajinu. Danas ću vam govoriti o povijesnim mitovima, ruskom propagandom, kako Rusija koriste fejkovi u stvaranju novih mitova i kako ona razvija stari mitovi o povijesti Ukrajine.
Okay, hvala ti za uvodno predstavljanje. Thank you. Maryna, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to say that I'm really happy and proud to be here to present the Ukrainian point of view. Unfortunately, for last 2 years, Ukraine is in the focus of mass media and attention of the whole world because of the war, which was started by Russia. And that is why when we have opportunity to present Ukrainian point of view, Ukrainian perspectives on different things which are the basis of this war, it's very important for us. So thank you for your support, and I hope that you will today hear some interesting and unknown facts for you from Ukrainian history. Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you both. Hvala objema. The plan is, first we will listen to Kateryna, prvo ćemo slušati Katerynino predavanje i onda eventualno možete postaviti nekako pitanje. And then we will listen to Maryna's presentation, onda ćemo slušati Marynino predavanje, isto tako možete postaviti nekako pitanje i nakon njenog predavanja. After both of the lectures, we can discuss even more and ask questions about the whole situation and the presentation of the war in the media right now. I think I also have some maybe interesting questions. Za učitelje iz Hrvatskoga koji trebaju potvrdu o usavršavanju, negdje tijekom predavanja više navrata ću pustiti kratki link. Gospodine Željko, treba ugasiti vaš mikrofon. Ok, jesam. Dakle, tijekom predavanja ću staviti link na koji možete upisati svoje podatke da vam napišem potvrde o usavršavanju. So, without further ado, dajemo riječ Kateryni. Ja ću otvoriti njenu prezentaciju, bit ću njen asistent danas.
Hvala ti. Pa šta, ne radi meni.
Evo, samo sekundu, sad ću ja pogledati tvoju prezentaciju. Evo.
Reci meni, koliko ima, 30 minuta?
Kao što sam rekao, nema ograničenja. Koliko misliš da ti je potrebno, koliko ti izdržiš. Evo,
Pa mogu i dugo govoriti.
samo ti kreni, izvoliš Katerina,
Mhm.
možeš početi.
Da, može dalje. Može sljedeće.
Ok.
A, Dobro. Tema mojeg predavanja je povijesne falsifikate i zablude u ruskom propagandom i ključne tačke, samo tri ključne točke koje bi htjela sa vama razbirati i o kojem bih htjela govoriti danas. To je što je ruski fejkove ili na hrvatskom to se zvuče falsifikate kao instrument rata protiv Ukrajine, koji je najpopularniji povijesni falsifikate u ruskoj propagandi i kako to je povezivano s povijestom Ukrajine i ruska propaganda i povijesni falsifikati, kako ona stvara novi mitovi i kako ona koristi uglavnom to protiv Ukrajine i Ukrajinaca. Može dalje. Milenko, može dalje?
Da, okrenuo sam.
Hvala. Malo dosadne teorije, ali bez toga nećemo razumjeti što je falsifikati. Ruski fake to ili fake uglavnom to je specijalno izmišljena lažna informacija o tome čega nikad nije bilo. Cilj pojavljanja fejka ili falsifikata je prevariti ljudi ili iskoristiti svaku dezinformaciju kao instrument propagande. Mi moramo razlikovati što fake nije mit u klasičnom razumljenju i što fake nije povijesni mit. Povijesni mit ili mit u klasičnom razumljenju to je malo iskrivljena realnost i prenos informacije koja je bila, koja nekad o pojavima, ratovima, ljudima. To znači mit ima realni temelj u svom trenutku, a fake to je nešto izmišljeno, specijalno izmišljeno da bi koristi kao dio, kao element propagande. I Rusija to stvara fejkovi i stvara na njihovom temelju stvara novi lažni mitovi koji uopće nema nikakve veze s povijesnim mitovima, ali to o tome govore što to je realnost i realnost samo takva koju vide Rusija, a Ukrajina tu realnost odbaca. Može dalje. Milenko, može? Da, hvala. To je samo neki dva primjeraka što znači fake u ruskom narativu, što znači mit u modernoj povijesti Ukrajine. Na prvoj slici možete vidjeti tri sestre kao simbol trojedinog naroda, Ukrajinci, Rusi, Bjelorusi i takav koncept, to ću malo govoriti da kasnije, je postao u 18. stoljeću i dobio je razvoj u sljedećim stoljećima i takav fake ruski predsjednik Vladimir Putin u 2021. godini je iskoristio u svojem članku da bi objasniti što Rusi i Ukrajinci stalno bili zajedno, što ne postoji poseban ukrajinski narod i ne postoji poseban bjeloruski narod, postoji tek jedini ruski narod. To je fake. Razvoj svih tri naroda bio poseban i Ukrajinci išli svom putom, Bjelorusi razvoj. Ali to je ruski što Rusi imaju pravo ukrajinsko i pravo zvati to sve ruskom. I primjerak povijesnog mita, moderne povijesti Ukrajine o duhu Kijeva. Ovaj mit je pojavio prošlog ožujka kad Rusija je počela invaziju protiv Ukrajine i mit je govorio što duh Kijeva štitio nebo iznad ukrajinske stolice i odbacio svi eksplozije ruske avijacije. To je mala istina. To je bila cijela eskadrilja aviona koji na početku invazije je štitila nebo, ali Ukrajinci su formirali ovu realnost kao u jedini mit koji pokaziva što je duh koji i zove se on duh Kijeva i on je povezivan s nebom, povezivan s zaštitom i povezivan zaštitom neba i Kijeva. Može dalje. Tako. Kako falsifikate Rusija koristi kao instrument protiv Ukrajine. Uglavnom, Rusija oblikuje falsifikate da bi opravdati identitet svog naroda, pokazivati što postoji tak ruski narod, ne postoji bjeloruski, ukrajinski narod, oblikuje da bi pokazivati nacionalnu samosvijest, političku kulturu, rusku političku kulturu i pokazivati drugačije razumljenje povijesti vlastite države i svijeta. Za rusku propagandu povijesni mitovi i povijesni falsifikati je glavni elementi formiranja slike Ukrajine i Ukrajinaca u cijelom svijetu, ne tek samo u Rusiji. Za Moskvu je važno da bi svi gledali na Ukrajinu i Ukrajinaca prema falsifikate ruske propagande. Drugačije Moskva odbacuje i stave tek sliku koja njoj potrebna da bi u svijetu imali stav takav koji hoće Rusija. Dalje. Pa i u drugom smjeru ruska propaganda koristi falsifikate za formiranje ruskog imperializma, posebne državne ideologije, posebne državne politike, gdje imperializam je neki temelj za formiranje povijesnih mitova i lažima. I on potreban da bi opravdati agresorski planovi, agresorski ratovi koje Rusija vodi zadnjih 500 godina. Formiranje ruskog imperializma i povezanje s njim mitovi potrebni da bi vratiti pod kontrolu Moskve naciji koji nekad bili u sustavu Moskovske države, Moskovskog carstva, Ruskog carstva, Sovjetskog saveza, bez lažnih, bez laži, bez falsifikata, bez dezinformacije urediti to nije moguće. Rusiji potrebno imati čvrstu državnu politiku koja bi imala temelj i ovaj temelj bi bio jasan i tačan za razumijevanje unutra samoj Rusiji i izvan Rusije, da bi ljudi razumjeli zbog čega Rusija vode svoj agresorski rat koje ona zove specijalna vojna operacija ili kako drugačije. To potrebno samo za opravdanje. I Rusija to iskoristila u prošle godine kad počela invaziju na Ukrajinu. Rusija to iskoristila u 2014. godine kad aneksirala Krim, a nakon toga okupirala neki dio Donetske i Luganske oblasti. Rusija to je iskoristila za opravdanje svoje agresije u Gruziji, u Moldaviji i koristi da bi opravdati svoju agresiju u Siriji, Libiji i drugačijim zemaljama, na primjer u Africi gdje tačno je ruski utjecaj. Dalje. Između najpopularnijih povijesnih falsifikata koji je temelj za razvijanje uglavnom povijesnih mitova, mogla bi nazvati 7 glavnih falsifikata. Prvo to je što Ukrajina ne postoji kao samostalna država, ne postoji kao nasljednica Kijevske Rusije. Na početku invazije prošle godine u internetu je pojavili se slike koje možete vidjeti na slajdu, što Ukrajina je država 404, što znači što failed state i uopće ne postoje takve zemlje, ne postoje uopće takve države i to je bilo potrebno da bi u svih korisnica interneta formirati razumijevanje što nasljednica Kijevske Rusije nije Ukrajina, je samo Rusija. I Rusija pozicionira sebe još kao zemlju trećeg Rima, što Rusija ima svi kršćanske cijennosti, što Rusija ima kneza Vladimira, on dobio kršćenje u Krimu. Krim je ruski, zbog toga Rusija još postoje sveta zemlja, a Ukrajina uopće ne postoje kao zemlja. Uopće nikad i ne postojala. To je jedan od najpopularnijih povijesnih falsifikata. Moramo razumjeti što to je laž, ali na kraj veljača, na početku ožujka 2022. godine, to je bilo jedan od najvažnijih elemenata ruske dezinformacije. Sada to malo smirio i ponekad može negdje pojaviti se ovaj fake, ali to je neki temelj da bi razvijete drugačije falsifikate, na primjer što Ukrajina je bila satvorena Leninom ili što Ukrajina je projekte drugačijih zemalja. Ali o tome dalje. Možeš dalje? Так, drugi falsifikat, najpopularniji koji pojavio ne prošle godine, ne ovu godinu, pa ne znam koliko prije 30, može bolje godine, što naziv Rus je samo u nazivu zemlje Rusije, nije Ukrajina. A znači Ukrajina nikad ne imala pravo zvati se nasljednicom Kijevske Rusije. Ako pogledate u povijest 18. stoljeća možemo baciti i na mapima Europe, što tamo gdje sada nalaze Rusija bila je zemlja koja se zvala Moskovija. Naziv Moskovija bila je promijenjena na naziv Rusija ili Rusko carstvo tek krajem listopada 1721. godine zbog rješenja cara Petra I. On formirao je monarhiju koja ne predviđala uopće neku decentralizaciju i on je htio samo imati apsolutnu vlast. I za njegovim mišljenjem nije bilo ugodno da bi nova zemlja zvala se Moskovija ili Moskovska kneževina, Moskovsko carstvo i on je rješao da promijenjati naziv preko Moskovije na Rusko carstvo. Ali na mapima, na povijesnim mapima Europe još tijekom 16., 17., 18., 19. stoljeća na mapi ponekad pisali i Rusko carstvo i Moskovija. I stanovnika Rusije zvali su Moskovite. To znači što Rusija ne postala kao nasljednica Kijevske Rusije. Rusija postala zbog toga što tako je riješio Petar I kad je formirao svoju novu državu i formirao novu politiku u Europi i htio je opravdati svoj imperializam. Može dalje. Može dalje.
We have already new slide, Kateryna.
Na ovoj slici možete vidjeti jednu stranicu iz francuske novine koja se zove Gazeta broj 6. Izdana je u Parizu u 1709. godine. I tamo je pisano što postoje dvije zemlje, Ukrajina i Moskovija. I tamo ide još riječ o tome što u Moskoviji žive Moskoviti. Stanovniki Moskovije koje u novinama neki novinar napisao kao Moskovites. Ova stranice, ove novine bile su popularni negdje krajem prošle godine u internetu kad opet Putin počeo govoriti o tomu što Ukrajina izmišljena, Ukrajina ne ima svoj identitet i Ukrajina uopće ne postojala nikad kao samostalna država na mapima Ukrajine. A ovo je potvrda što on je širio laž i nasuprot toga možemo vidjeti što Ukrajina još na početku 18. stoljeća bila je spomenuta u francuskim novinama pod nazivom Ukrajina. Dalje. Na početku 20. stoljeća također koristili naziv Moskovija i ovaj primjerak samo kao moskovski jezik. Možete vidjeti, to je naslova knjige nekih dva rječnika. Rječnik moskovsko-ukrajinski i rječnik ukrajinsko-moskovski, koji bio je sastavljen u Kijevu u 2018. godine. To znači što sve što govori Putin o tomu što Ukrajina nije imala svoj identitet, nije imala svoj jezik, nikad ne postojala kao samostalna, to je laž, to je falsifikat. Vidite informaciju što to nije tako i na početku 20. stoljeća nije bilo ruskog jezika, bio moskovski jezik. I ovi rječniki to je potvrda tome. Dalje. Treća laž povezivana s prvom i drugom i govori nam o tome o čemu često Putin piše kao veliki povjesničar ili veliki propagandist, što Ukrajina je projekat drugih zemalja. Ispred vama je mapa Ukrajine u periodu 19. godine, izdana u Parizu, gdje je napisano što to je Ukrajina. Ovo ljeto u Moskvi vrlo često propagandisti na televiziji, u novinama, u socijalnim mrežama govorili što Ukrajina, prvo što oni su govorili, što Ukrajina je projekat Lenina, što samo Lenin je stvorio Ukrajinu. Dalje počeli su govoriti što Ukrajina je sotvorena Poljskom, ali dalje ruski propagandisti počeli govoriti što i Poljska je sotvorena Britanijom i Francuskom i konačno ruski propagandisti uopće ne razumjeli što oni su govore tko konačno je sotvorio Ukrajinu. Ukrajinu niko ne sotvorio. Ukrajina ima dugi period svoje državnosti i o tome sad ću vam bolje detaljno govoriti. Može dalje. Ispred vama to je glavni periodi razvoja ukrajinske državnosti koja je počela još u 9. stoljeću. Ukrajina kao i svaka evropska zemlja ima periode samostalnosti, ima periode kad ona bila uključena kao posebni teritorij u drugačije države, bili su periodi obnove države i na kraju u 91. bilo su konačno obnavljena državnost i samostalnost Ukrajine. U 9. stoljeću tamo gdje možete vidjeti na slici postala je Kijevska Rus ili Rus, kako zvali zemlju u bizantijskim kronikama. Ponekad još spominjuje naziv Rus Ukrajina. Krajem 12. stoljeća i do sredine 14. Rus je raspala kao svaka feudalna zemlja i počela razviti se pod nazivom Галицько-Волинсько kraljevstvo. Ili još u historiografiji to se zove Rusko kraljevstvo. Tada Ukrajina prvi put dobila svog kralja Danila Romanovića ili ruska historiografija njega se zove Danilo Galicki. Dalje razvoj državnosti bio povezivan s velikom kneževinom Litve, gdje Ukrajina dobila neku samostalnost. Obnavljanje državnosti počelo u 17. stoljeću kad bio je veliki rat Богдана Хмельницького protiv Poljske i država koju on je osnovao bila samostalna, nakon toga autonomna do kraja 18. stoljeća. Dalje su ukrajinski teritoriji bili podijeljeni između Austrije i Ruskog carstva i tako je trajalo do kraja Prvog svjetskog rata, kad počela Ukrajina polako obnavljati svoju samostalnost. To je vrlo kompliciran period na teritoriju Ukrajine zbog toga što veliki dio Ukrajine, uglavnom to je bilo devet samostalnih jedinica koje se zvali gubernije, obnovili državnost pod nazivom Ukrajinska narodna republika, koja je bila na mapi Ukrajine do 1922. godine, kad bila uključena u sustav Sovjetskog saveza. U zapadnim dio Ukrajine je postala Zapadno-Ukrajinska narodna republika, koja je proglasila želju Narodnom republikom u siječnju 19. godine. Ukrajinske zemlje i Ukrajina nakon Prvog svjetskog rata, to je bila teška povijest koja je povezana stalno s ratom protiv Rusiji, s ratom protiv Poljske, s ratom unutra Ukrajine. I to sve završilo se uključivanjem ukrajinskih teritorija u Sovjetski savez. Sada imamo novu viziju za ovaj period. To kod nas počeli zadnje 2-3 godine zvati period sovjetske okupacije, koji je trajao od 22. do 91. godine. Zbog toga što to je bila sovjetska okupacija, proglašanje neovisnosti u 91. godine korektno se zvati obnova državnosti Ukrajine. Može dalje. To je neki vam primjeriki što Ukrajina imala svoju državnost u neki periode. To je mapa države koju je stvorio je Bogdan Hmelnicki. Oficijalni naziv države je bio Zaporizhzhia republika ili Ukrajinska kozačka država, vojsko Zaporožka, koja je bila osnivana u 1648. godine i negdje došao njoj kraj u 1175. godine. Može dalje. Ova je slika i mapa Ukrajine u 19. godini, kad bilo proglašeno ujedinjenje Ukrajinske narodne republike i Zapadno-Ukrajinske narodne republike. I vidite na mapi što Ukrajina tada imala svog prvog predsjednika, Михайла Грушевськog, predsjednika vlade koji se zvao Volodymyr Vinnychenko, imala svoj grb koji je vrlo sličan s današnjim grbom. Imao je svoju zastavu i imalo svoj novac koji također se zvao hrivna. I prije državne promjene vlade krajem travnja 18. godine Ukrajina dobila svoju konstituciju ili svoj ustav. Može dalje. Neće priključiti. Aha. To je mapa Ukrajinske socijalističke sovjetske republike nakon svjetskog rata. To kad u sustavu Ukrajine bili su vraćeni zemlje zapadne Ukrajine koje dala Poljska, Češka, Rumunija i kad u 54. godini Ukrajina je dobila Krim. Može dalje. I tako izgledala Ukrajina nakon ruskoj agresiji u 2014. godine. To je Ukrajina u svojim granicama u 91. godini. Dalje. Da, i malo još povijesnih detalji. Kad Ukrajina je obnovila neovisnost u 91. godini, u Kijev je došao predsjednik Ukrajinske narodne republike Mikola Plavjuk, koji je bio predsjednik Ukrajinske narodne republike u egzilu. Kad u 1922. godine Ukrajina postala dio Svjetskog saveza, a vlada UNR je otišla u egzil i tamo je bila u svakim zemaljima, u svakima. Ali ona je štitila i hranila simbole ukrajinske državnosti, arhiv, dokumenti koji bili povezani s državnostom Ukrajine, koji bili povezivani s Kijevskom Rusijom i Rusom i Kozatstvom. I kad 1. prosinca 1991. godine bio je izbran prvi predsjednik Ukrajine Leonid Kravčuk, vlada u egzilu je rješila doći u Kijev i dati Kravčuku državne klejnote, državne simbole državne vlade Ukrajinske narodne republike, da bi pokazivati što moderna Ukrajina, koja je obnavila neovisnost u 1991. godine, je nasljednica Ukrajinske narodne republike. To je bilo važno da bi pokazivati legitimnost Ukrajine, pokazivati tradicije državnosti i pokazivati što Ukrajina je nasljednica UNR i svih drugačijih perioda koje imala Ukrajina u prošle stoljeća. Nažalost, Ukrajina u 1991. proglasila sebe ne nasljednicom Ukrajinske narodne republike. Ukrajinska vlada godine proglasila sebe nasljednicom Ukrajinske Sovjetske socijalističke republike. Sada ukrajinski pravnici počeli mijenjati ovaj stav, ali mi to komplicirano pitanje zbog toga što ako Ukrajina će proglasiti sebe nasljednicom Ukrajinske narodne republike, mi ćemo dobiti novi teritorijalni probleme s našimi susjedima, uglavnom s Poljskom i s Rumunskom. To znači, ako Ukrajina je nasljednica UNR, mi moramo preko međunarodnog arbitraža, međunarodnog suda dati odgovor zbog čega je zapadni dio Ukrajine je uključeni u Ukrajinu, a ne uključeni u Poljsku. To, ali naši pravnici znam da čitala što ovi pitanja sada istraživaju da bi dokazivati što Ukrajina je nasljednica Ukrajinske narodne republike. Može dalje. Četvrti fake, što Krim uvijek je bio ukrajinski. To laž koja širi se internetom i širi ruska propaganda zadnji 9-10 godine do kraja 18. stoljeća. Krimski poluotok, Krimsko kanstvo nikad ne postojalo u sklopu Ruskog carstva, nije bio dio Ukrajine, tek kad Rusija rješila svi pitanja s Turskom, i Turska već ne postojala kao neprijatelj Ruskog carstva na Crnom moru. Krim nije bio potreban Ruskom carstvu kao neki saveznik ili prijatelj u ratovima protiv Turske. I u 1783. godine carica Kateryna II. Je izdala manifest o primanju poluotoka Krima, otoka Taman i cijele kubanske strane pod rusku državu. I tada je pojavilo akt o prisjedinjenju Krima, Tamana i Kubani Ruskom carstvu. To možemo nazvati što to je prema međunarodnog humanitarnog prava, sada bi zvalo se kao okupacija i aneksija. Može dalje. Još jedan mit koji je povezan s ovim, što Krim je poklon Nikite Khrushcheva Ukrajini u 54. godini, ali mi imamo dokumente koji je potvrda što je poseban ukaz o prenosu Krimske oblasti iz Ruske federacije u Ukrajinsku socijalističku republiku, a razlog takvog poklona Rusiji je bio obični prozaični s ekonomskim razvojem. Na kraj 53. godine, kad je umrlo Josip Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev otišao je u Krim i vidio što tamo sve gospodarstvo, domaćinstvo, sve je u pokvaru, ništa ne rade, vinogradske grođe uopće ne rode. Na cijeli poluotok je radio nekoliko trgovine i ništa uopće ne razvijalo se. Riješiti pitanje za Krimsku oblast bilo je najlakše pripajanjem do Ukrajine. I to je pitanje bilo riješeno vrlo brzo. Kao razlog bio je iskorišten dokument koji je Bogdan Hmelnicki je potpisao u 1654. godine između Ukrajine i Rusije. On tada zvao ruskog cara Oleksija da bi on dao protektorat Ukrajine protiv Poljskoj. I ovaj dokument tada je slavio u 54. godine 300 godine od zajedničke družbe između zajedničkog prijateljstva između Rusije i Moskva. To je bio razlog zbog kojeg riješili što potrebno dati Ukrajini Krim. To je bio tek temelj. A istinski razlog što ekonomsko Krim je bio jako u lošem stanu i potrebno njega bilo vraćati u ekonomiju i Svjetskog saveza i Rusije i Ukrajine. Može dalje. A tako se Rusija rješila vratiti Krim koji nikad nije bio ruski. U veljaču 14. godine postala je okupacija Krima koja traje do sada i Rusija to se zove vraćanja istinskih ruskih zemalja. Može dalje. Laž koju vrlo često aktualiziraju u Moskvi, što ukrajinski jug, jugoistok stalno je bio ruski i u Rusiji to se zove projekat Novorosija. Također govori Moskva što to je istinski ruski teritorij koji nikad nije bili pod kontrolom Kijeva. Zvali su ove teritorije divlje polje, napuštena stepa, tatarske horde, a u 19. stoljeću postala je Novorosija. Na mapi je crvenim pisanje datumi koji pokazivaju kad gradovi, na primjer Mikolajev, Herson, Mariupol je bili pripajeni Rusiji. Ovi gradovi Rusija od prošle godine počela zvati ruskimi, zvala njih tako i u 14. godine kad počela se agresija Rusije protiv Ukrajine. I vrlo često spominjaju sada u svakoj propagandi što jug i istok Ukrajine, projekat Novorosija, to je obnavljanje ruskih teritorija i tamo živi tek samo Rusi i nikad Ukrajinci tamo nisu živjeli. Ako pogledate na popis stanovnika koji u 2001. godine jedan popis u neovisnoj Ukrajini, to tek jedan grad u Ukrajini je pokazivao 100% ruskih stanovnika. To je bio grad Sevastopol. Ništa posebnog u tomu ne moramo vidjeti. To je bila zatvorena vojna baza Črnomorskoj mornarice, a svi drugačiji gradovi nikad ne pokazivali takav rezultat. Negdje u Donjecku, ako ne grešim, je bio 60% Ukrajinaca, tako se ljudi sebi identificirali kao Ukrajinci. U Lugansku negdje 60, može do 70%. Bili su tamo Rusi, ali nije njih bila većina. Rusi govori drugačije, ali Rusi ne koriste rezultati naših popisa. Oni su koriste rezultati svojih falsifikata. Može dalje. Pa može dalje samo. Ću brže. Dalje. Da. Ova laž koju jako vole Rusi, što Ukrajinci i Rusi braća i jedan narod. Ovaj koncept na početku predavanja sam govorila o njemu. Ovaj koncept je pojavio još u 18. stoljeću. Autor koncepta je ukrajinski svećenik Feofan Prokopović. Samo Feofan Prokopović je postao autor naziva Moskovije kao ruskog carstva. On je bio veliki fan Petra I, onda vjerovao njemu u njegovu ideju i počeo raditi zajedno s njim. Preselio se iz Kijeva u Peterburg i živio tamo. I samo koncept o jedinom narodu predviđa što svi istočni Slaveni je jedan narod. Ovaj narod Feofan Prokopović, a nakon toga ruski su propagandisti uključili tri naroda, Ukrajince i Bjeloruse. Razvoj koncepta je počeo u 19. stoljeću kad ruski carevi su proglasili Ukrajince Malorusi, Bjelorusi su postali kao dio ruskog naroda. I dalje u 20. stoljeću ovaj koncept bio glavni, ključni da bi pokazivati što Ukrajinci i Bjelorusi imaju sličan s ruskimi identitet. Može dalje. Na slikama možete vidjeti razvoj ovog koncepta o jednom narodu, tamo gdje postoje spomenik na lijevoj strani, to je spomenik koje stoje u blizini u Černigovskoj oblasti, ne pamtim naziv sela, i spomenik je bio postavljen u 75. godini blizu granice tri zemlje, Ukrajine, Bjelorusije i Rusije. I ovaj spomenik simbolizira tri sestre, Ukrajinu, Bjelorus i Rusiju. Negdje prošle proljeće u blizu ovog spomenika uletjela je ruska raketa. Vrlo simbolično. I s desnoj strane možete vidjeti hotel koji se zove Slovjanski. On je bio izgrađen na početku 2000. godine u malom gradu Novgorod-Siverski. To je Černigivska regija gdje prošao susret predsjednika Rusije, Bjelorusije i Ukrajine. To je bio neki simbol slavenskog jedinstva, realizacije koncepta o trojedinom narodu, ali to je bio tek kratko ujedinjenje tri naroda. Sada u hotelu malo tko živi, on tako i stoji, niko njega uglavnom ne koristi, ali ovi Černigivska regija za jedan i drugi spomenici su bili izbrani zbog toga što regija nalaze blizu i Rusiji i Bjelorusiji. I to je vrlo dobar primjerak pokazivati kako se razvija koncept trojedinog naroda. Može dalje. Zašto nismo Ukrajinci, Rusi jedan narod? To su moji argumente, uglavnom s njimi slaže se i ukrajinski povjesničari. Ukrajinci su nasljednici Kijevske Rusi, pa Rusi ne. Rusi ne postoje kao nasljednici Kijevske Rusije. Mi smo imali poseban povijesni putevi razvoja, imali različiti uvjeti formiranja narode. Razvoj Ukrajinaca je uvijek bio povezan s Europom. Rusi su povezani s azijskim narodami i ukrajinski jezik, kultura, povijest je jedinstveni koji odgovaraju razvoju ukrajinske državnosti. Može dalje. Pa i ovaj fake je pojavio se zadnjih 4 godine kad ekumenski patrijarh Bartolomej potpisao Tomas za obnove autokefalnosti Ukrajinske pravoslavne crkve. Rusija se govori što Ukrajinci podijelili pravoslavni svijet, ali to nije tako. Bartolomej tek obnovio samostalnost Kijevske mitropolije, koja Kijevska mitropolija imala još od 9. stoljeća. Tek krajem 17. stoljeća zbog turskih ratova, turske invazije na ukrajinsku teritoriju, Kijevska mitropolija morala privremeno prositi zaštitu u Moskvi, a tamo je bio vrlo smiješan epizod povezan s tim što u Moskvu je došao tadašnji ekumenski patrijarh i Rusi njega uzeli u neku okupaciju i držali u Moskvi oko godine, dok pod pritiskom tada patrijarh ne priznao privremenu
контролу Руської православної церкви над Київською митрополією. І було є підписано синодське письмо, і Руси заборавили за нього, але у Константинополю світу памче і имaju свої архіви. Ова синодський лист, koji bio potvrda o privremenom kontrolu Kиївської митрополії pod Ruskom crkvom, bio je izbacen u listopadu 18. godine, kad Бартоломей je rešao što Ukrajinska crkva mora se obnoviti vlastitu samostalnost. Može dalje.
Kako ruska propaganda koristi povijesni falsifikati i stvara povijesne mitove. Uglavnom to je mit od kojeg je počela se današnja invazija. Mi smo jedan narod. To je razlog možemo tražiti u članku Vladimira Putina koje on je objavio u srpnju 2021. godine, gdje jako dobro objašnjava što Ukrajinci i Rusi je jedan narod, što mi moramo živjeti zajedno, što sve što je rusko je opće i tako dalje. Dalje, na temelju falsifikate ruska propaganda stvara se drugačije mitove, što na Donbasu živi ruskojezični narod, što Krim je ruski, što istok pa i zapad Ukrajine su različiti. Ukrajinci su malorusi i su mlađi brat Rusiji, što svi Ukrajinci tjeraju i ukrajinska vlada tjeraju sve rusko i ukrajinski jezik je dio ruskog jezika. Može dalje. Kako ruska propaganda koristi ove falsifikate u svojoj propagandi? Prvo što ona formira drugačiju sliku povijesti Ukrajine, formira zablude u Ukrajincima, ukrajinskoj povijesti, ukrajinskom društvu. Drugo, ona širi negativnu informaciju, narative o vladi Ukrajine, u ukrajinstvima, o svemu u ukrajinskom identitetu i kulturi. Ruska propaganda prema fejkove stvara narative što svi Ukrajinci su nacisti, Rusija hoće mir, a Ukrajina to odbaca, što Ukrajina što Rusija ima svoje obaveze prema zaštiti Donbasa i što Ukrajina stalno podržava terorizam. Ruska propaganda prema fejkova stvara falsifikaciju povijesti, dokumenata i mapa. Ja bih htjela naglasiti što to Rusija rade ne tek u 21. stoljeću. Falsifikacija povijesti i dokumenata samo ukrajinski je počela u 17. 18. stoljeću, kad Ruskom carstvu je bilo važno pokazivati što Ukrajina je pripajena na legalnom temelju u sustav Ruskog carstva. I ruska propaganda stalno govori i dokaziva što Ukrajina tjera sve ruskojezičnih ne tek na istoku, u jugoistoku, u drugačijim regijama i što Ukrajina hoće zabraniti korištenje ruskog jezika, zabraniti rusku kulturu i rusku književnost. Može dalje. Kako Rusija ima veliku mrežu za širenje svojih mitova i svojih fejkova. Ja sam napisala tek samo ključne instrumente širenja ruske propagande. To je samo glavni. Je još detaljnije koje formiraju pa kao neki sustavni elementi medija, ruske fondove, ruske kuće, narativ Rusije je velika država. Uglavnom, svi instrumente Rusija koriste kao neki kompleksni approach da bi sve pokazivati što ruska, da, hvala, što sve ukrajinsko ne postoji. Njoj je važno pokazivati što ruska propaganda nije propaganda, što dezinformacija to je istinska povijest koju predložila je Rusija za cijeli svijet. Glavni instrumenti to je medija i društvene mreže, ali Rusija također aktivno koristi rusku dijasporu, ruski simbole koji je poznati u svijetu, na primjer ruski medved, narativ što Rusija je velika država, stvara i otvara ruski fondovi, ruske kuće, ruske nevladine organizacije koje imaju financiranje iz državnog budžeta Rusije. To je glavni instrument i to je aktivno koristi u cijeloj Europi, uglavnom centralna i jugoistočna Europa. Može dalje. Hvala.
The last one.
Ok. Hvala.
Hvala Katarina na predavanju. Stigli su neki komentari, ali obzirom na trajanje predavanja ja ću staviti komentare za kraj, ako se slažeš.
Okay.
So we will leave the questions and commentaries for the end of the second lecture. Thank you very much, Kateryna. Maryna Bessonova, you waited for a long time. Now you have the floor. You can share your presentation and we will carefully listen to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm worried that everybody is tired because from one point it's very interesting and I understand Kateryna, she's supposed to put as much as possible into her presentation. I have the same, but I hope that everybody will survive. Now I will try to share my screen and you will tell me whether it's full screen presentation on your screens. Or no, just okay. Now it's supposed to
fine. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm associate professor at the Department of International Relations from the Faculty of Law and International Relations, Borys Grinchenko Kyiv University. But before I was working and living in Zaporizhzhia, where Kateryna is from and I was from, and I was working for more than 17 years at the Zaporizhzhia National University of the Historical Department. So I'm a historian, but I'm now working in the field of international relations. Today my lecture will be connected with the memory wars. It will be very brief because it's a very deep topic and it's supposed to have a lot of sub-issues and subtopics to be covered, at least the great majority of the issues which we are discussing within the memory wars of Russia and Ukraine. A few words and like pictures from my university. Here, as you can see, Kyiv, Zaporizhzhia is over there. So I moved from this city to the capital city. A few words for facts about Kyiv. It's the capital city of Ukraine. First settlements of the place where Kyiv now is located was founded in the age of the 5th century Anno Domini. Population of Kiev is almost 3 million people, and Kiev metropolitan area is more than 3 million people. But on unofficial data, before the war, it was like Kiev metropolitan area are populated with 5 million people, because many are renting their apartments and they are not calculated into these statistics. In Kiev, there are a lot of educational establishments, and among them you can see the number of universities, academies, and institutes. And Kiev now is a combination of old cities and some kind of these modern buildings, which are combined in the same territory. As you know, Ukraine is located in the central and eastern part of Europe. Our flag, probably, unfortunately, everybody knows it since 2022, and the emblem of our country. I want to say that my lecture is some kind of continuation of what Kateryna was talking about, that Russian propaganda is everywhere, and we can find it in mass media, we can find it in teaching of history at schools, at universities, we can find Russian propaganda science in the approaches of scholar research of history, both Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and world history as well. And that is why history is a science, history is a school discipline, history is a vector of somebody's research, and as a popular culture genre, it's one of the tools of Russian propaganda. And the results of this Russian propaganda, now we have this war in our country, which starts in 2014, and the active phase of it starts on the February in 2022. One of the greatest consequences of this 1.5 or even more years of this active phase of the war is the depopulation of Ukraine. You can see that at least on the March of 2023, there was a number of people of Ukrainian population calculated as around 43 million of people. But yesterday, when I was preparing for this lecture, I checked, and the number of people in Ukraine are estimated as 37 million, and many of them fled for the country. People are living in Europe. They are moved to the countries of North and even South America, and the main reason of all this is some kind of consistent consequences and results of Russian propaganda. This is just few pictures from the first days of the war. This is very, how to say, famous photo of the mother and the girl on the Kyiv railway station, and this is a photo from Kharkiv railway station, where people were trying to escape from Kharkiv, which was very close and still very close to the Russian border. But as Kateryna said, and probably you already know, that a war of Russia against Ukraine starts not in 2022, but in 2014, and some kind of contradictions between Ukraine and Russia starts even earlier. Here is the scales of the territories which are occupied by Russia. The total number of Ukrainian territory is more than 600,000 square kilometers, and this is by red color. You can find the territories which were occupied by Russians in 2014. At that time, it was 7% of the territory of Ukraine. In 2022, in February and May, 20%, almost more than 20% of Ukrainian territory was occupied by Russia. And here you can see over the year, this territory was freed from Russians, but this territory are still occupied. And the city of Zaporizhzhia is very close to the front line, where is Kateryna, and I'm basically from this city, but still it is not occupied. And sometimes there is some kind of misunderstanding in the mass media when they call Zaporizhzhia is occupied, but Zaporizhzhia is the same word for territory, and Zaporizhzhia is the same word for the name of the city. And now, if we are talking about the maximum of the territory which was occupied of Ukraine, it was around 125,000 square kilometers, twice as much as territory of Croatia. And this is just once more just to realize the scale of Russia and Ukraine and who is the victim and who is the aggressor. When we're talking about history, we have to say that Ukraine unfortunately has the image that it is some kind of part of Russia. And this is one of the reasons and the consequences of the Russia's narratives, which are more popular and more known in the western part of Europe and in all other countries of the world. And that is why when we are talking about these contradictions and conflict and war of Russia against Ukraine, we have to talk about historical roots of all these things. Today, I will try to speak about some issues of the memory wars. This term is a little bit a new one for Ukrainian historiography, but now it's very popular because it can not only describe, but make it clear the roots of these contradictions and the reasons of the Russia's war against Ukraine. The term memory war describes the political conflict fueled by different perceptions of a shared history. And the basic issue, which I think Kateryna was talking about, and in my lecture probably you can find this, that the main is what do both nations think, not only about themselves, I mean Russians about themselves and we Ukrainians about ourselves, but also we have to take into account what do Russians and Ukrainians are thinking about Russians and Ukrainians. If to make some kind of, in the form of slogan of this basic issue, I think that it can be named the following, that Russians thinking that we are the same, and Kateryna told you about this concept that three brother or three sister nations, Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians. But Ukrainian main slogan or idea is that we are quite different. Today I will try to focus my attention into two stories about stolen names and about the different perceptions of the Second World War and the Great Patriotic War. But of course, there are a lot of other issues which can be discussed and described within the concept of memory wars. Like, for example, in the field like Ukraine between East and West, or Crimea was always Russian, is that true? Or Ukrainian crisis or Russian-Ukrainian war. And I can say that it is not the whole list of the issues which can be discussed within this field. So stolen names, today I will talk about two, descriptions, the name of the state, and then one more point of view. Kateryna already told some facts about Ukrainian history and origin, so probably you will now hear the same in my description, but I will tell about a little bit other things. When we're talking about the name of Ukrainian state, Ukraine, as many other nations in the world, had different names during their own history. We can find such names as Kyiv Duchy or Kyiv Principality, Kyiv Rus, Gardariki, Kuyavia, Rus, Ukraine, the Cossack Hetmanate. Also the same period, it was like Cossack Republic, Vійська Zaporizhzhia, the Zaporizhian host of army of Zaporizhzhia, Ukrainian People's Republic, and so on. So, I mean, if somebody, I mean, Russians appeal to the fact that there is no, the one name Ukraine within all this historical period, it's not the argument, because the same story you can find in the history of many other nations. Here you can see the main phases of the Ukrainian history. And by red color, I point you out those periods of Ukrainian history when Ukraine was closely connected with the history of Russia. But as you see, not all these periods are colored by the red. So, I mean, not all the history of Ukraine was connected completely with Russia. So to tell that Russia and Ukraine has the same history or the same periodization of history is not true. And Kateryna already told you, and I will tell some facts that we really are different, and Russians approach that we are similar. It's not, how to say, we don't agree with this. When we talk about the earliest periods of Ukrainian history, I can say that through the history of Ukraine, there were a lot of migrations of different people, and a lot of different nations settled on the territory of current Ukraine. Here you can see by the white color, you can find the border of today's Ukraine. And here there were some kind of Greek colonies here. So history of the territory of Ukraine is connected with the history of the ancient Greece. As well, there are a lot of different tribes like Scythians, which were located on the territory of Ukraine. So, I mean that if somebody wants, they can try to find arguments, and that Ukraine is not only Russian, but Scythian, I don't know, Greek and Turkey, and so on. The first political pages of history of Ukraine today is connected with the Kievan Rus. Kateryna has told a lot of this about this story. That's why I will not talk a lot about this. What is the main for us is this Kievan Rus, this first state, is some kind of heritage for history of Ukraine, but now this is also seen by Russians as their own heritage. At that time, Kievan Rus was very closely connected with Europe, not with Asia. And there are a lot of different arguments which we can find in the historical sources. There were marriage connections, there were different agreements. Of course, there were some kind of wars and contradictions. But history of Kievan Rus, or today's Ukraine, it was closely connected with European events. If we will talk about today's Moscow, today's Russia, at that time they were not as well known in Europe because simply they didn't exist at the time. That is why this discussion or wars or conflict, historical conflict of the shared history of the names Ukraine, Rus, Russia, or Russia in the Ukrainian language is one of the main focus of the today's memory wars between our countries. When we are talking about these discussions about Rus, we have Ukrainian interpretation of this word, and the same we have the Russian version. Ukrainian interpretation is the following: that Russian state stole the name of Rus, they make some kind of rebranding of it, and instead of famous for Europe and Greek tradition Russia, Rus, they invented Russia, and then they just add the second letter S, which now is, for example, in Ukrainian, in Russian language, in Ukrainian with one S, it's used like Russia Russian. And this how to say, stealing of the name appeared in the 18th century with the reforms of the Tsardom of Muscovy. And it was very, how to say, very smart measure to connect the history of unknown Moscovia in Europe with the known history of the Kievan Rus. Russian version is the following: that Russia was the old name of European part of today's Russian state. They are trying to find a lot of sources where they can find the word Ruski. Here is one of these examples of one of the old documents. But Ukrainians do not agree with this because they say that this Russian, Ruskaya Zemlya, it's not Russian, but it's connected with Rus, not with Muscovy, but with the history of Ukraine. The oldest document where we can find this name Russia is dated by by the end of the 14th century, and in Cyrillic letter you can find here that it is mentioned the Metropolitan of Kiev and all Russia, Київський митрополит Київський і всія Русі. Тобто not Russia, but Kievan Rus is mentioned in this document. By Russian it's interpreted like Russia. Here you can see some kind of like popular culture meme which appeared first in the page of Twitter of the US Embassy in Kiev just 2 days before the full-scale aggression of Russia against Ukraine, where you can see the comparison of what was on the place of Kiev, Ukraine, and what was at the same time on the place of today's Moscow. And you can see that 10th century, 11th century, 12th century, there were a lot of architecture, churches, and urban landscapes, civilization on the territory of today's Ukraine. But in the place of today's Moscow or today's Russia, you can find there was simply wood, so no civilization. We also can find this thing that the period of Kievan Rus is used in Russian popular culture, especially in cartoons. So kids from the very beginning are watching these cartoons, and they have some kind of understanding of Russian version of understanding of history of the Kievan Rus. One of the main characters in these cartoons is the Prince of Kiev, Duke of Kiev, Vladimir, he was the one who baptized the Rus in the end of the 10th century. But in these cartoons, he is some kind of negative hero. So he's always is described that he's trying to steal something, that he's stealing gold from the ordinary people, and that Russian warriors are, how to say, conflicting with this very bad guy. This issue of the using of such things in popular culture is very important because kids have these first images of Ukraine, of Kyiv, of Rus, not only from the textbooks of history in school, but also from these popular cartoons. Another discussion is not only the name of Russia as state, but the name of Ukraine. Russian version describes Ukraine as a part, some kind of outskirts, periphery, and that it can't be found on the old maps. So Ukraine never exists. It's some kind of very new thing which was invented at the beginning of the 20th century. Ukrainian interpretations, of course, trying to describe that name Ukraine means a little bit other words. It's not the periphery, but the country, the motherland, and the first documents where the word Ukraine was used are dated by the end of the 12th century. So Ukraine as a word first we can find in documents dated by 1187, and the word Russia is in the documents which are dated like almost 2 centuries later. Just few maps to prove that there are maps where word Ukraine were used. Here is the map of Ukraine, which were drawn by the French military engineer cartographer Guillaume de Baplan. On the next slide, I will show you that here you can see the name of the map is Ukraine, Ukraina. And here you can see in the same part, on the same map, the mention of Magni Ducatis Moscovia. So not Russian Tsardom or not Russia or some other places. So Ukraine in 1680s and Moscovia Dukedom the same year. Ukraine is on the map, and there is no Russian state or Russia on this map. Some other documents or proofs which I would like to tell you about is the example of Moscovia coin. It's almost a little bit later than the previous map. So here is the end of 17th century, and this coin is 1707. And also you can find here name Moskovsky ruble. So not Российский or Ruski, but Moscovian ruble, not word Russia is used here on their own coins. Also, there is example of the map which was drawn by one of the German travelers. He also drew it like the map of Moscow, capital de la Moscovia. So the capital city, not of Russia, not of Russian state, Russian empire or something else, but the capital of the La Moscovia. And we can find a lot of other maps which proves that word Ukraine were on maps, and at the same time there were no Russia, that Russia appears on this map a little bit later. The second focus of very brief explanation of the stolen names is part 2, connected with the Cossacks. It's very important for people who are living in Zaporizhzhia, because word Cossacks in Ukrainian history is connected just with our region. Zaporizhzhia, if try to interpret or to translate this word from English or other languages, or from Ukrainian to other languages, it's like Zaporogami, so the place beyond the rapids, or behind the big stones in the river, because this place of the Dnieper River is full of these huge rapids or stones in the river, and so the place beyond the rapids is called Zaporizhzhia, Zaporogami. It was a place inhabited by free armed people who get this name, Cossacks. One of the most popular versions of the origin of this word is that it is from Turkish language. This place was depopulated because there were a lot of conflicts and wars with the representatives of Crimea. Khanet, they make their invasion to the lands of the former Kievan Rus. At the time it was already in the within the borders of the Rich Pospolita, Poland and Lithuania. And here was the place where the Cossacks lived. They were free armed people. They were lived by their, how to say, military, not traditions, military. Military was for them like a profession. There is also some kind of arguments in the documents that they were even like a private army used by French kings and somewhere else. And one of the historical places for the history of Zaporizhzhia Cossacks is the Zaporizhian Siege. It's a fortified camp. This is the reconstruction of it, located on the island of Portisa, which is very close to the city of Zaporizhzhia. So you can ask me what's the connection between the stolen names, Zaporizhzhia and Russian-Ukrainian wars. The story is that Russia also stole the Cossacks, and they're told that there are only Russian Cossacks and that they are traditional Russian military formation. But the history of Cossacks in Russia appeared only in the 18th century, while the first notes in the historical sources about Cossacks from Ukraine are dated by the 1489, so like at least 300 years earlier. How do Cossacks appeared in Moscow? In 1775, after the end of the next Russian-Turkish war, Russian troops, they were returning back from the war with Turkey, and they received a task from, at that time, Russian Emperor Kateryna II, and the last Zaporizhzhia siege was ruined, and some of the Cossacks migrated to the Black Sea region, and other part of the Cossacks moved from this place to the Azov Sea coast, and where they get the name like Azov Cossacks, and then since the time they were supposed to be as Russian formation. Here you can see the pictures of different types of Cossacks, but the main origin of them, of this word, of this social group, like a military man, very brave and very talented in war things, is connected with this place, which are connected with the history of Ukraine. Here you can see the picture of today's Russian Cossacks. They have nothing mutual with the Ukrainian Cossacks, Zaporizhzhia Cossacks, but but Russians suppose that Cossacks is also their own invention. I just want to tell you one more fact, that Cossacks is very important for like a symbol of freedom for Ukrainian nation, and of course they are depicted in the Ukrainian contemporary mass culture. One of them is also cartoons for kids. It is a number of series about the adventures of Ukrainian Cossacks, Zaporizhzhian Cossacks, and the author, the main animator of this traditional and most known and well-known animation was Vladimir Dakhno. He was born in Zaporizhzhia too. And interesting thing that his animation is supposed to be that under the great influence of the Zagreb School of Animation. So he studied some kind of experience of Zagreb animators and used this experience when he was making this animation cartoon. And the last point is the memory wars between Russia and Ukraine, connected with such a great negative, tragic event in the history of the whole Europe, is the Second World War, which in Russia is also is always depicted like the Great Patriotic War. What's the difference in the perception of the Second World War by Ukrainians and by Russia? In Ukraine, formerly, when it was within the Soviet Union, it was the same tradition like now in Russia. The war was described not like the World War, but like the Great Patriotic War, the war of Soviet Union against Nazi Germany. And the main period of it was 1941, 1945. But European tradition and current Ukrainian tradition is explaining these events not like only this war against Nazi Germany, but it's like the Second World War, which started in 1932 by the invasion from Soviet Union to Poland and from Germany to Poland. Also, this different perception of the events of the Second World War now we can find in the days of the commemoration of these events. Ukraine formally, oh, sorry, I missed it, because here it's supposed to be 8 and here it's supposed to be 9. In Ukraine, now we have this tradition of the commemoration of these events, like the Memory Day, within the European tradition to commemorate it on the 8th of March. In Russia, they still have the Soviet tradition, Soviet heritage, that this day is celebrated on the, on the 9th of May. And they are mostly talking and thinking about this day as like Victory Day. So here we have like this European tradition now, and this day is about memory and reconciliation. In Russia, it is holiday and celebration. This, understanding of European tradition and in Ukraine connected is also with the with Ukrainian history, which within the Soviet times it was impossible to study. It was connected with the Ukrainian insurgent army, with the organization of Ukrainian nationalists, and we get this opportunity to study our own history only after the collapse of the Soviet Union. About Russia and Russian perception of these events, they still are under the dominance of the Soviet heritage, and for them, the most thing is to celebrate this great event when they win this war. Now, many people are talking about so-called победобесие. In Russia, it's like being crazy of victory. It's like very victory mania or obsession with victory, and they have some kind of victory cult. You can here is some screenshots from their today's Russian websites. They have all this. They have even internet shops where they are selling the forms of the Soviet army times, and it is not the old things. They are already new and they are done. I don't know, probably it's made in China, but they are sold in Russia. And there is some kind of like different, especially, like sector segments in this website, the form of the USSR, the form of the Great Patriotic War. And it is different sites. And to tell the truth, I was shocked when I saw that how popular it is now in Russia. This picture shows another way of celebrating the victory. They are building some kind of models of Reichstag or some other events or of the Great Patriotic War, and they are making some kind of these role games when they're attacking Reichstag and putting the Soviet flag on this roof and so on. Here you can see this combination impossible in the Soviet times when Stalin is depicted like some kind of god. When it's impossible, I want to say, in the Soviet times, because religion was separated from the state, and to draw a Soviet leader connected with some kind of religious images, it was at that time impossible. Another pictures which show that this being crazy of victory. Every year on this 9th of May, and especially last years, they have such a habit to organize these festivals and meetings where everybody is wearing this Soviet form, and you can see that even small kids, newborns, they have the same form. They are making these models of tanks and so on. Even in the far north the regions of Russia, even if it is snow, the kids supposed to march like so. I mean, this militarization of society from the school, it's really impossible. And here you see that they are claiming that they are country which how to say, which won the victory over Nazi. But you see that when they're celebrating this victory, they are making such a very strange moves. And here is one more example of celebration on the 9th of May in some kind of strip clubs or like other clubs. They're making such an, how to say, invitation for people to come and to celebrate Victory Day. And on some, unfortunately, once I saw it on the internet, but I don't say that on some of these, how to say, reclama, they're even proposing some kind of sales for veterans of the World Great Patriotic War. I mean, people of the age, at least when it was 75 years of this victory, and they are proposing them sales to go to use. It's unbelievable. But this is like for the last years of Russian culture. And this is the great difference between Ukrainian approach and Russian, because in Ukraine we are talking about never again, because I mean these slogans, they formed even before the events of the 2022. So for Ukrainians it's like European approach, never again. But in Russia they are talking about we can repeat, and unfortunately we see that they really can do it. Here is some kind of examples when they are showing this Predavanja, that they are writing some these words that they are moving on Berlin, that they are moving for German women, and all these sad events. You can find a lot of T-shirts with such things when Russia in the years of the Great Patriotic War get victory won under the Nazi Germany. Now for them the main enemy is the United States of America. And this is the difference which caused a lot of debates, not only popular level, but on the level of historians. And this is the example that we are really different, we are not the same. One more example of some kind of approval of the militarization of Russian society is that they built a special cathedral, which is called the Church of the military of Russia. Even you can, there is some kind of small article on the Wikipedia. If you are interested, you can find it. And also they have their own site. You just can go there and to watch by yourself. That is for me that the combination of church and religion with the military is a little bit strange, because they're not, just thinking about victims of the conflicts and the wars and about these sad things where people are moving to church to pray for those who are already dead because of wars, but they are glorifying the army, the military, and so on. This is some kind of pictures from my own story, because to prove that this Russian, we can do it again, is pictures made from my video on the 24th of February 2022. Here you see the morning when people were trying to escape from Kiev. And this is the next day when the streets are simply, it was even worse when it was in the COVID times, when nobody you can find on the streets. I, with my kids, we spent some time in the basement of our building, and here is free streets with free parking space, which for Kiev is really unbelievable. And there are some shortages of the events of the 2022. Here is the screen of the map of the rocket attack on Ukraine in October of the last year. You can see here is by blue color the places of the only one day when the same moment rockets were targeting Ukrainian places, and you can see that there is no safe place. It is on the north of Ukraine, in the west of Ukraine, on the south of Ukraine, and on the east of Ukraine. And here is some footages from the buildings which were announced by Russians like a military aims, but it is the building of Mykolaiv Oblast administration, and this is the building of one of the places where simply people live. What do I want to pay your attention on is that even since a year of the beginning of this war, in some mass media, we can find the phrases that it is Ukrainian crisis, not Russian-Ukrainian war, but Ukrainian crisis. And this is one of the results because of Russian propaganda and Russian narratives. They are more popular, they are more widespread, and they still are working to support their approach to this event. This is photos from Zaporizhzhia. This was a part of a building where people lived. It was simply ruined because a rocket was put there. Here is another building in the other district of Zaporizhzhia. This is one more, another and another. And there are a lot of Ukrainian cities and villages which are completely destroyed by Russians. A lot of them are in the eastern part of Ukraine. And this is like personal story. This is a window from my sister's flat. They were just living near this building, which was ruined, but they have only a very light version of attack, simply a problem with window. And one more, how to say, photo fact that Russia now is interpreted in Ukraine as anti-Europe or anti-civilization. Another footages of Zaporizhzhia destroyed, and I want once more to stress that there are a lot of the same facts in the many other cities, in the many other regions of Ukraine. And here you can find small mice, just small animals, which were found in the regions close to Kyiv when it was deoccupied after Russians. And they simply made such, I don't know how to describe it, they simply make some kind of fun with dealing in such way with the animals. So that is why it's very difficult to to understand, but at least we see the roots that everywhere where Russians came, we can see the same picture. Here is the pictures of the Chechnya capital city, Grozny. Here is Syria. Here is Mariupol and Kharkov, Ukrainian city. If you are interested, I can send these links to our organizer of this meeting, and you can check them. There are English language version. You can find many information here. And once more, there is a very good book of Ukrainian by origin historian Sergei Plokhy. He many years, more than 20, is working in United States of America. He is a historian. And he wrote a book, The Gates of Europe, where he is describing in very nice way the history of Ukraine from the Ukrainian, not Russian point of view. And I would highly recommend you to read this book. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maryna. Also, Kateryna, it was very interesting to listen to you, to all the examples that you shared. I think that most of the audience and also most of the people that will be watching the recording afterwards on our YouTube channel will gain very good insight in Ukrainian history and in the events that are happening right now. I will invite our listeners, pozivam naše slušatelje da pripreme pitanja, to prepare the questions, and I will start. I will start with Maryna because this is the more fresh lecture in my head. It was very interesting to see that part of the presentation when you said about the Russian narrative about the Second World War. And for several times you mentioned the Patriotic War and you mentioned the years 1941, 1945. But I'm a historian and you are also a historian. When we are talking about the Second World War and also when we are talking about the Soviet Union, the war hasn't started in 1941. So there is a totally blank spot for 39 and 40.
You know, the reason is that if Russians will talk about the dates of the war since 1939, they're supposed to say about who starts the war and what happens with Poland and so on. And of course, it's impossible for them to say that they were also aggressors as well as Nazi Germany. That is why in their textbooks of history, yes, they're talking about Second World War, but then they're just switching to the Great Patriotic War. It's a big deal in Ukrainian history because in 2010, when Yanukovych came into power as a president, and he also had this very vivid pro-Russian vector. In the Ukrainian approaches of the teaching history, there was some kind of, how to say it is the Reformation, counter-reformation. It was a position of that time Minister of Education of Ukraine that Ukrainians supposed to put back this narrative about Great Patriotic War into Ukrainian textbooks of history in schools, and not to talk about only Second World War. I mean, this clear pro-Russian vector connected with all these interpretations of the Second World War or Great Patriotic War, still we have this because people of the elder age, they're still remembering, because Russian propaganda, Soviet propaganda, they very deeply influence the people. And for them, they are still traditionally talking about Great Patriotic War. And this is some kind of demographical thing that, I mean, youth is talking about Second World War, and the people who are 70 years and more, they're talking probably still somewhere, you know, automatically talking about Great Patriotic War.
Of course.
And it's in brief because it's supposed to talk a separate lecture about this.
Yeah, we can organize that, no problem. Bilo je nekoliko komentara tijekom predavanja. Pozivam kolege, evo kolega Josip Šibarić se javio u komentarima, možete se uključiti i kamerom ili zvukom ako želite. Ako ne, mogu ja pročitati. Isto i kolegica Tatjana je imala neki komentar. Ko želi, neka se uključi pa možemo razgovarati.
Dobar večer.
Dobro večer, kolega.
Evo, pozdrav svima, posebno predavačicama. Oba predavanja su bila jako zanimljiva i zapravo mi nismo imali toliku percepciju Ukrajine kao podcijenjene nacije u okviru ruskoga političkoga prostora. Ali zapravo kroz oba ova predavanja se vidi koliko Ukrajina i Hrvatska imaju jako puno sličnosti. U tome što su imale dominantnu naciju iznad sebe koja je istoslavenska, koja je imala i teritorijalne pretenzije i etničke pretenzije i mijenjala povijesne činjenice. Dakle, puno sličnosti Ukrajine i Rusije, Hrvatske i Srbije kroz njihove povijesti. A mene zanima gospođa Kateryna, ako može reći, Kijevska Rus. Kako, jer nisam to dovoljno kroz vaše izlaganje vidio, kako Rusi percipiraju Kijevsku Rus? Oni je smatraju ruskom državom, a ne ukrajinskom.
Da, tu mislim teško i komplicirano razumjeti ako ne učite celu povijest. Rusi govori u svom narativu što Ukrajina, što Kijevska Rus, to je prvi period ruske državnosti. I dalje od Kijevske Rusi počeo razvoj moskovske zemlje, moskovske knježevine i tako dalje.
Oni automatski Kijevsku Rusiju smatraju Rusijom.
Da. Oni to koristi ovaj naziv zbog toga što vrlo rijetko u dokumentima i udžbenicima pisali Ukrajina, tek samo Rus i svjetski povjesničari počeli koristiti još dodatni naziv Kijevska Rus. Uglavnom u bizantijskim kronikama zemlja Ukrajine tada postala kao Rus. Uglavnom Bizantija koristila Rus. Kao kad počela formirati povijest u Svjetskom savezu, ovaj period počeli su smatrati kao period Kijevske Rusije, da bi oddeljavati od moskovske knježevine. Oni su izmišljali naziv Galicko-Volinska Rus, ali to je bilo drugačiji naziv. Tada mi imali Galicko ili Rusko kraljevstvo. ali to sve bilo izbaceno iz historiografije. Ukrajina sada pokušava vratiti korištenje dvije definicije. Rus u smislu kao Ukrajina, zbog toga što naziv Ukrajina je u kronikama je postalo, kao Marina je govorila, u 1187. godine. I ruski povjesničari krivo to čitaju kao za njih Ukrajina znači kao neki mali kraj.
Da, segment, a ne država.
Da pokušavaju vratiti da bi koristiti normalno. Je verziji da bi pisati, na primjer, ovaj period u školskim udžbenicama kao Rus Ukrajina ili pisati davnju ruska država, ali da bi izbaciti ovo iz korištenja definiciju Kijevska Rus. Ali Rusi u svojim udžbenicama stalno u školskim za višu školu oni su koriste definiciju samo kao Rus, to je početak ruske državnosti i vidite sada naziv Ukrajina ne ima uopće ništa povezanim s Rusom. Znači mi jedna nasljednica koja može to koristiti.
And I want to add 2 points. First one, that in the Soviet times, in the history teaching at school, there were 2 main subjects: the history of the USSR and the world history. And the history of the USSR started from the events of the ancient Armenia and Kievan Rus, and all this was interpreted as the history of the Soviet Union. Okay, Soviet Union was created in the 20th century, but they still are teaching this period of Kievan Rus as the first phase of the Russian history, Soviet history, I mean now Russian history. And my second point is that not far ago, somewhere in 2020 or 2022 or 3, they have changed their concept of their methodology of teaching history at schools. And one of the points of this new perception of Russian teaching of history is to cut off the name of Kiev in this period of ancient Rus. So even from the textbooks, they're supposed to cut off this name Kiev, but still are describing this period as the period of the ancient Russian history. So for them, it's really some kind of tool of propaganda and brainwashing.
Hvala na odgovorima, hvala kolegi Josipu na pitanju. Komentirala je i Tatjana, ne znam da li se želi javiti uživo ili da ja pročitam komentar. Tatjana, ako se želiš javiti...
Možeš ti pročitati, nije uopće problem, evo ja sam tu.
Pa već ako se javila, onda reci.
Ok, da na engleskom ili na hrvatskom, reci sad kako kolegicama je lakše.
Pa možeš na engleskom da razumiju više obje, ajde.
Okay. I want to ask both of you, what do you think about neo-Nazism in Ukraine and the battalion Azov, which is part of the National Army of Ukraine, because nationalism is growing in many countries in Europe, if you know that. Do you understand me?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
I will start and Kateryna will, Azov is one of these, the story of Azov is one of the stories which are depicted and described and used by Russian propaganda as the argument to prove that there are Nazis in current Ukraine. But it is one of their, they are not as right as they are described in Russian propaganda. And if you will look at some Russian organizations, they are really new fascist and nationalism. And the problem is that in Russian interpretation, every nation which they supposed to interpret their own history from the point of view of their own nation, all this is some kind as the falsification of Russian history. So I mean, Russian history is supposed to be Russian national history, but Ukrainian or Estonian or Latvian or other nations, if they are describing their own history from their own national point of view, they are Nazis, nationalists, and something or other bad words. So this is in brief to react fast on your question. Probably Kateryna will.
But it's not only in the Russian media, it's in American media and other media in Europe, and it's not only the Russian part.
You know the problem. And please tell me, where do American and other media took their information?
It's on the internet.
Internet, okay. And
NBC and some other American media part.
Yeah, of course. And you know that Americans be sitting in America and they're describing what is going on in Ukraine. If they will come to Ukraine, probably they can see some other details of the situation. The problem is that Russian narratives, unfortunately, are more massive and more widespread all over the world. And we have no such amount of money, people, energy to, how to say, to be compared with them. That's the reason, because even in the scientific world, in this mass media world, Russian element, they present in much more big scale than Ukrainian or all other nations. That's the main reason.
Okay.
One more thing, for example, imagine when Croatian history is described only by Serbians. This the same. I mean, the traditional Serbian is larger. That's why there are a lot of people who are writing and from the point of view of Serbia, and they're talking about their own history as well as of history of all other nations who were around them, and this can make a picture that their version is right and all other nations are not right. That's the main problem, that it's very difficult to oppose Russian machine of information, disinformation, and propaganda.
But nationalism in Croatia is growing, and these days Ivo Goldstein was in Karlovac, and he was talking about growing nationalism and the revision of history in Croatia. So we have this problem. I don't know if you have that problem. It's not depend on Serbia, depend on the Croats who are doing that, and Miljenko know that also. So I don't know if you have that problem.
Let me just jump into this matter. The topic about Azov, not just Azov, but also different kind of neo-Nazi political engagement also in Ukraine and in Russia. It's much more broader. Maybe it's even better to organize a different another time to speak about it, because there is a big difference between Azov military wing and Azov political wing also 10 years ago, and the behavior right now. That's a total different subject. Also, to compare the events in Croatia in 1991 during the beginning of war in Croatia, there are some similarities between various groupations, because also in the beginning of 1991, as our Croatian teachers know, we also had elements of neo-Nazi para-wing military, and we are still dealing with that issue 30 years after 1991. Also, I think in Ukrainian history, they will have a different outlook on all of these events in 20, 30 or more years, not to broaden the topic too wide. Do you want something to add, Kateryna, maybe in this?
Imam samo новини америчке или другаче европски, morate računati što ruski narativi, ruska propaganda je veliki utjecaj na svi američki medije, na svi evropski medije, ne tek samo na medije Ukrajine, Srbije ili drugačijih susjednih s Hrvatskom zemalja. Sve što piše američki medije za Azov, što piše na primjer, njemački medija za Azov ili za Krim, to potrebno gledati preko prizmu ruskoj propagande. Niko ne razumije što je Azov osim Ukrajinaca, osim Hrvata. Puno mojih prijatelja Hrvata koji je opisani i branili se u Azovu. Možete njih pitati kako potrebno govoriti i što potrebno izmišljati o Azovu. Azov od 14. godine u hrvatskim novinama, u američkim novinama stalno postaje kao neka neofašistka jedinica koja stalno vodi neku fašistsku ideologiju u Ukrajini, ali to je sve propaganda. To je sve što piše Rusija i svi američki mediji moraju također računati što Azov, on je jedinica koja je postala da bi braniti ukrajinski gradovi na jugoistoku Ukrajine. O tome nikad niko ne piše. Piše tek što Azov je nacisti, je nacionalisti. Ako pogledate na povijest Hrvatske, Hrvatska na početku 90-ih također imala nacionalizam u svojoj unutrašnjoj i vanjskoj politici. U nacionalizmu nema ništa loše. I ako govorite što Azov je nacionalisti, ok, oni su nacionalisti, ali u dobrom razumijevanju. To nije neki neofašizm ili drugačiji radikalni ideologiji kako to pokaziva ruska propaganda. Hvala.
Hvala vam lijepo, ali se slažem sa Miljenkom da za 20-30 godina ćemo vjerojatno sasvim drugačije i vi gledati i sve ostalo i mislim da je stvarno za neku drugu emisiju. Slažem se Miljenko s tom potpuno.
Hvala na komentaru Tatjani i na odgovorima Katarine i Marine. Imate li još komentara ili pitanja? Možete se javiti uživo, napisati kako želite. Za to vrijeme dok se još publika odlučuje za koje pitanje, vezano uz predavanje o fejkovima koje je Katarina držala. Ja moram priznati da sam do prije februara 2022. bio prilično ignorant vezano uz situaciju u Ukrajini. Mislim, pratio sam vrlo površno 2014. Majdan i stvari koje su događale, ali nakon toga jednostavno nije mi bilo u fokusu pažnje. A od februara prošle godine intenzivno pratim događaje i vezano uz fejkove. Primijetio sam da postoje fejkovi i oko stranih dobrovoljaca koji se bore u Ukrajini i na ukrajinskoj strani, ali i na ruskoj strani. I još jedan problem koji sam uočio sa fejkovima je fejkovi lažnih organizacija koje prikupljaju pomoć. Kako vi na to gledate, vi koji ste iznutra, na te pojave? Kako se država, kako se Ukrajina obračunava s takvim pojavama?
Pogledaj, kad ruska propaganda puno govori o stranim dobrovoljcima u stranoj legiji koji počeli su upisivati u našu vojsku ili našu stranu legiju, oni hoću u Moskvi pokazivati što drugačije zemlje je uključeni u rat koji vode Ukrajina. Oni hoću pokazivati što rat je građanski i ovi su neki stranci imaju svoj utjecaj, svoju ulogu za ovaj rat. I svih stranih građana koje nam pomagaju na vojnom ratu, što pomagaju u humanitarnom sferom, pomagaju u drugačijim dijelovima Rusije, to sve izmišlja drugačije. Ona sve izmišlja što Rat u Україні почала не Росія, а рат є в Україні почала Америка і почало є НАТО. Kad stalno Rusija širi narative o ruskim dobrovoljcima, o ruskim dobrovoljcima, o stranim dobrovoljcima širi nešto slično, to je glavno da bi pokazivati što vi vidite, mi vodimo oslobodilnički rat. Mi hoćemo osloboditi sve naselje Ukrajine koje hoće živjeti bez kontrola Amerike i NATO-a. I pa ne znam, to je potrebno gledati i razumjeti što Rusija ima veliku mrežu ruske propagande i svaki narativ o stranim dobrovoljstvima, to o Ukrajine, što drugačije zemlje nam pomagaju zbog toga što to je pod pritiskom NATO, to moramo svi dijeliti na 2 ili na 3 da bi vidjeti istinsku sliku toga što Rusija hoće i koji rezultat Rusija hoće imati za takvu propagandu.
Hvala Kateryna na komentaru. Thank you both for your lectures. Again, I think it was very interesting and probably very useful for our teachers. It would be so nice to end this meeting, these 2 hours, with a strong message that the war could be over next week and all the Ukrainian territories could be liberated. And I'm hoping that this victory and this liberation will come, but based on current political situation, I cannot see that this will end very soon, especially if I look to the European and also to American assistance. In my personal opinion, the assistance is in the form that they are giving Ukrainian army just enough to defend, but not enough to achieve victory. And I'm afraid that many more Ukrainian lives, not just soldiers, but also civilian lives, will be lost before the final victory. Any more comments? Hvala predavačicama za ova predavanja, piše kolegica Belulo. Hvala Marija. Sanja isto kaže hvala svima. Prije se javila Nataša, isto zahvala na prezentacijama. Vasilik Željko je napisao prvi sačuvani trag kojim je zabilježeno ime Ukrajina, datira iz 1187. godine, kada u kijevskom ljetopisu autor piše o smrti Perjaslavskog kneza i plakaše za njim svi Perejaslavci, a zbog njeg se i Ukrajina u crno obavije. Hvala Željko na tome. Jesmo nešto preskočili možda? Mislim da nismo. Ok. Maryna, Kateryna, final words, message on the end.
Maybe, Maryna.
Okay, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. First of all, I would like once more to say thank you very much for this opportunity to present Ukrainian point of view, and many thanks for those who ask questions, because for us it's very important too, because it's some kind of feedback. How do people and what do people know about Ukraine and about current situation and about the origin of this situation? And it's very important that history teachers are now informed a little bit more, another point of view from our side, because our school pupils, they are supposed to be critical and they're supposed to be able to use different sources of information. And we hope that really today we give you this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maryna. I was very carefully listening both to Maryna and Kateryna, because I wrote an article about these events, about this part of history last year in the issue of our magazine, because I wanted to give something to our teachers some, so to say, first information, and when I was looking at your presentations, I saw that I didn't make mistakes, so that was good. Also, Marija Belulo je pitala za prezentacije. If we can share the presentations, put the presentations on our web page.
Yes.
Можемо.
Yeah. But I will send you an improved one because, okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So if we don't have any more questions or comments, ako više nema pitanja i komentara, hvala svima. Snimka će vjerojatno sutra biti na našem YouTube kanalu, pa se može naknadno pregledati. Vidimo se nekom drugom prilikom. Laku noć.
Laku noć.
Bye. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.